This week's movie is going to be the 1976 film King Kong. And I know what you're saying. I'm not going to pretend like it's a great movie, that it comes anywhere near the 1933 King Kong, but it is a fun movie and one that when I was a kid, I loved to watch. In this version of the movie, you have a petroleum exploration from the oil company Petrox, which ironically is a name developed, not a real oil company. Pet rocks were very popular at the time, which is basically just a pet rock for people who aren't from that era. They were a big thing where it was a literal rock that came in a box marked pet rock, and you would take care of it knowing that it couldn't die, it didn't need to be fed or anything like that. But that is where the name of the oil company comes from in this movie. And they go to this island to find oil. And yes, there is oil on the island, but there is King Kong. And in this version, they don't refer to the island as Skull Island. I think it's mentioned once that it is the name translates to Island of the Skull, but this is where you have the least reference to the island being Skull Island. You have Jessica Lange in her first on-screen role playing the character of Dewan. She is a girl who was found floating on a dinghy in the middle of the ocean. She had survived a boat explosion from where she was the only surviving member of the people on that boat, and they happen upon her floating out at sea and welcome her on the boat as well. Jeff Bridges' character is named Jack Prescott. He is the young, handsome lad who sneaks on the boat. He had heard about the strange rumors of that island. He wanted to take a look at it. He is a young scientist and environmentalist looking to see if the legends of the island are true and to help preserve the island. He is discovered on the boat, and since they're off, they don't really jail him or anything. He ends up becoming the photographer of the exploration. So he gets to go on the island to photograph what they find. You have Charles Grodin, who plays the leader of the expedition, named Fred Wilson. He is the Petrox employee who is in charge of the exploration to find the oil, and what they end up finding is a huge ape. The director of this movie is John Guillermin, who also directed The Towering Inferno, one of the disaster flicks of the 70s. I would classify, although not in the classic sense, I would classify the remake of King Kong an offshoot of the disaster flicks that came out in the 1970s. They were so popular at the time. And the producer of this remake of King Kong is also Dino De Laurentiis, who was the producer of a lot of those 70s disaster movies. And I stand by my assessment that I know that this King Kong is not a good movie, but I think it's a fun movie. And I think it still holds up as a fun movie to watch. There's some questionable things in the movie that are kind of off-putting for people of this day and age, but it's not that bad. But King Kong is still the ape that becomes obsessed with the young blonde white woman on the island and tries to possess her. In this version of the movie, they try to make Kong more sympathetic, and with the way that Dewan and Kong sort of develop real feelings, not sexual, real feelings towards each other, although there are some scenes in there that the implied sexualness of the relationship is a little It was a little scandalous, let's say. And this version of King Kong famously trades the Empire State Building, the iconic New York landmark that means New York to a lot of people as much as the Statue of Liberty does. It trades it for the newly opened World Trade Center, which I guess looking back at it these days might hold a little bit more meaning that it actually was the World Trade Center, knowing that they no longer exist. And it kind of gives a nostalgic look at the World Trade Center. You do get a lot of good shots of the inside and outside of the World Trade Center in this movie, which is interesting to see because it no longer exists, the documentation of it. So that makes it a little bit more interesting than the time that it came out. Because if you don't know, the World Trade Center buildings were not that popular, especially when they first came out. Their architecture was criticized by a lot of people, just boring, bland architecture. But now for everybody, the World Trade Center buildings holds a lot more meaning for us than they did back in the 70s when this movie was made. And those parts of the film are actually filmed on location in and around the World Trade Center. The movie is a combination of being shot in Hawaii, New York, and on sound stages in Los Angeles, I believe the Warner Brothers studio. Kong himself is made up of several facets. When you have the close-up of his hands, those are large mechanical hands that wrap around Jessica Lange. So in those shots, it's just a large mechanical hand. He's also suited mechanical ape in this movie. Rick Baker, the famed makeup artist, is the guy who was in running with another group that was making another Kong suit. His suit won out, and he is actually the person in the suit operating the mechanical suit as well. And I think this is the last time that Kong was done with a fully animatronic suit action mechanical Kong instead of a CGI or claymation Kong. Dino De Laurentiis, who produced the movie, had two stipulations: that he wanted it to be set in modern day. Originally, when they talked about a remake of Kong, it was also going to be set in the 1930s and more closely follow the original storyline of the original 1933 King Kong. So he wanted it set in modern day, and he wanted the World Trade Center in it instead of the Empire State Building. Helped make it a landmark, and it literally just opened a couple of years before this movie came out. Some of the people that auditioned or were offered, in some cases, the role of Dewan before Jessica Lange got the part were Kim Basinger auditioned, Meryl Streep auditioned, and revealed in an interview with David Letterman that she was considered not attractive enough to play Dewan, saying that she was too ugly for King Kong. Also, Bo Derek, I believe, was originally offered the role of Dewan, and she turned it down. Fay Wray, who was still alive at the time, and she famously played Anne in the original 1933 movie, she was offered a cameo for this movie, and she turned it down because she absolutely hated the script. This movie was the most expensive movie to shoot in 1976 as well, and it was the 7th highest grossing film of the year. The filming of this movie took 7 months, and they worked over 12-hour days to make this film. It was shot from January to August 1976. The New York City scenes were filmed in June of 1976. And the casting call went out. They needed over 5,000 extras in the movie, and 30,000 people showed up to be an extra in the movie in the New York City scenes, and they used all 30,000 people. King Kong actually does not appear in this movie until you get 53 minutes into this movie. This movie's running time is 2 hours and 14 minutes. So nearly half of this movie, 40% of this movie, is done in a movie called King Kong, where the first 40% of this movie doesn't include King Kong. This film also uses a lot of miniatures from Miniature World Trade Center, when they couldn't use the actual World Trade Center, of course, destroying it, and miniature subway cars, besides also being shot on location for the New York sequences in actual New York City. And speaking of a sensitive subject nowadays, because of how the World Trade Center was destroyed, they had to, after September 11th, had to redesign the covers of this movie. I think you can find some of the original covers nowadays, but of course it had King Kong at the top of the World Trade Center with aircraft around it and explosions going off. So that was pulled off the market, and the cover was redesigned after the September 11th attacks. So again, I'll tell you, 1976's King Kong, it's not a good movie, it's a fun movie. And sometimes you just need fun movies. And when spring upon us, it just seems right to have a nice, light, fun movie with a huge ape killing people. It makes sense, in my head at least. My name is Stacia, and I love movies, and I love talking about movies. And this is my little corner of the internet where I talk about film. I am finally to 150 subscribers, and I want to thank every one of you that has subscribed. And I'm just focusing on getting to 200 subscribers right now. My ultimate goal is to get 1,000 subscribers. And I like to build a little film community here. So I invite you, if you watch this, please subscribe to the channel. Please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. Get the conversation about film going. Tell me what you like or dislike about the 1976 version of King Kong. And you can always give me other suggestions of movies to watch. There might be some that I haven't seen out there, although I've seen a lot, but I will check them out. But again, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for getting me to 150 subscribers. I appreciate each and every one of you. I love you. See you next week. Bye.